Fox News alert. He says it's what the American people want and deserve. President Trump making the full court press on what he says is a once-in-a-generation plan to reform the nation's tax code. A plan he believes can remake the American economy and lead to a, quote, middle-class miracle. This is Outnumbered. I'm Sandra Smith, here today, Harris Faulkner, host of Kennedy on Fox Business, Kennedy. Also from FBN, the anchor of the intelligence report, Trish Regan. Today's hashtag One Lucky Guy, Blaze TV contributor, the host of the Lawrence Jones Show. Lawrence Jones himself joins us. He is outnumbered.
Thank y'all so much.
Dare I say, he's one of the most polite guys on the planet, a Southern boy. Good to have you back.
Dapper dresser, too, from the South.
Had to bring a little Texas with me.
There we go. Hey, Texas.
I love it. Let's begin. Republicans releasing the framework for their tax overhaul. They're calling for cuts in tax rates, as well as simplifying the complicated tax code to an easy formula to get America's economy moving again. In pushing for the plan yesterday in Indianapolis, President Trump saying he believes even some Democrats will come on board.
Tax reform has not historically been a partisan issue, and it does not have to be a partisan issue today. I really believe we're going to have numerous Democrats come over and sign because it's the right thing to do.
Meantime, the president tells Fox News that the GOP plan is aimed at helping the working people and the middle class.
We say the working people, middle class, the people that really haven't been treated right, Pete, and they have been treated right, really for a long time, have not been treated right. Also, it's going to be for businesses where they're going to employ jobs, where they're going to bring in jobs. So it's for jobs. This is a tax plan for jobs and growth for our country. It'll be the largest reduction in terms of dollars of any plan ever in the history of the country.
But House Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi, not a fan. She says the president's tax proposals are a big swindle, which will only reward the rich and explode the deficit.
The Ryan McConnell tax framework is not tax reform. It is a framework that gives away the store to the wealthiest while sticking the middle class with a bill. It's the swindle of the American people, selling the same blueprint the failed trickle-down Bush tax cuts for the rich did not create jobs and only increase the deficit.
But speaking of the deficit, the conservative House Freedom Caucus, known for being deficit hawks, jumping on board to support the plan. So, Lawrence, the president says this is for the working people, the middle class. This doesn't have to be a partisan issue. Will Democrats get on board?
No, and I think it's pretty funny that they are so concerned about the deficit, considering they just spend our money. I'm really surprised that they got the Freedom Caucus on board so fast. I think that's the right direction. The problem is with the Senate. It seems to be a lot of resist from even Republican senators, and I don't think they'll be able to get them on board. Now, a lot of them have a re-election coming up, so maybe that can push them toward the middle. But it's a lot of these calls for regular order can happen, specifically because there is such an ideology problem when it comes to Democrats and Republicans on this issue.
Trish, you have been so passionate about this and wanting this to get done. Is this the right plan?
Well, it's better than what we got, I'll tell you that. Simplify it because it's highly complicated right now. I'd love to see 3 brackets. And we need to start rewarding people in the middle. I mean, I talk a lot about this hourglass economy that we're living in right now. In other words, you have a lot of people on the top and they'll do fine for themselves. And you have a lot of people on the bottom that get a lot of subsidies. You've heard me mention before, Sandra, the mother of 2, for example, in Hawaii that has nearly $60,000 worth of government subsidies. Well, why is she going to go to work when she's getting taxed so heavily and has therefore less take home effectively? We need to think strategically, because what happens is those people in the middle, that woman that otherwise might be making $65,000, she's the one getting squeezed. And so maybe she's falling into that bottom part of the hourglass. We need to revamp our tax code. The sooner, the better, because we have to help all Americans.
Kennedy?
help all Americans by cutting their taxes and cutting spending. It's a magical and simple formula. It's the Calvin Coolidge plan, and everyone in Congress has an allergy to it, unfortunately. There's this great strain of populism that we need to tax and punish the rich, that prosperity is somehow a great sin in this country, and it's not. And the more you lower taxes, even for those who are at the very highest end of the income earning spectrum, go ahead and lower it, and you will see what happens. You will see tax revenues increase. The government will collect more taxes because rich people will avoid, they will rather stop avoiding paying their taxes, and they will do much more within the confines to increase that revenue. Also, you know, the government is doing a great deal to repatriate some of the international businesses, but cut taxes, cut spending. I understand why the Freedom Caucus is on board, because Republicans are supposed to be the economic party. This is supposed to be the fiscally responsible party. There's nothing more fiscally responsible than growing the economy. Do that by cutting taxes.
So that brings me to my question. Do Republicans in the Senate know who they are supposed to be?
No.
No.
Right? Are they
There's no one such thing as Republicans in the
who
Senate.
they apparently want to be and who they are supposed to be?
Right.
And can they maybe in their own houses figure that out before they leave the house in the morning with the briefcase and the cell phone?
Can I jump in? So this is a very interesting point you bring up. The president yesterday said, and I've long maintained, this does not need to be political.
No.
You can cut taxes whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. JFK, by the way, taxes were as high as 91% on the biggest earners in our economy. He cut taxes by 30 points. Guess what? GDP, economic growth went
People
up
spent that money.
6% after.
Yeah,
exactly.
of course they did.
Same thing with Reagan. He cut taxes, and you saw annual average growth of 4% in his presidency as a result. So this can be done either side. Typically, you saw a lot of Republicans, they were the hawks. They were the fiscal hawks that said, you can't spend, you can't spend. And so JFK represented more of the free spending, let's cut taxes. All I'm saying is it doesn't matter what party gets it done, and I don't care who they identify with. Just do it.
Well, it matters because the Republicans aren't going to be able to count on the Democrats. And this is about the last point where they're going to be able to do something with majority votes. Things start to change. So are they in it to win it, or are they just going to pretend to be somebody who, you know, we think they should be concerned about fiscal. And we think that that's part of a Republican platform, a conservative platform. But apparently most of them in the Senate don't agree with that.
They don't agree, and you can see that just in legislation from the House, over 200 bills passed that has been essentially died in the Senate. But I would push back on some of the conservatives that think that this doesn't go far enough.
But you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, we got to start somewhere. And we're talking about people that are living paycheck to paycheck, that are counting pennies.
Which is most
Every
people,
bit
by the way.
matters.
In that hourglass that you talked about,
the majority
most
of people don't have $500 saved.
They're in the middle, below the bill.
They're falling down.
But when you talk about
coming out like the sand.
When you talk about those conservatives that have criticized us for not going far enough, one of those points is on the corporate tax rate, right? Because the president said he was shooting for the moon. He was going to go for 15% from 35%. He said in negotiations he settled at 20%.
And that's a red line.
Is that enough?
Look, I think he figured out when you added this all up, it was going to be very challenging to have enough revenue coming in. So there was some fiscal awareness there. One thing I do want to point out, you hear how many members of the left are trying to paint this as a big tax cut for the rich, big tax cut for corporations. Number one, businesses, primarily small businesses, are what employ Americans. So there's incentives here for people.
Yes, and if those corporate tax rates help them, to your point, that's absolutely right. But the other thing is Republicans have to do a much better job of selling this to the middle class.
They do.
And if they really believe in this tax proposal, they have to do what Democrats are doing. Democrats are scaring the bejesus out of their constituents to get them all riled up against the bill and to justify not voting for tax. Everyone wants a tax break. Everyone wants more money in their paycheck. Democrats, Republicans, and independents.
Is that they are wrong when they say that. This is not going to benefit the wealthy in a disproportionate way. In fact, many of the wealthy in states like California and New York are going to possibly be paying more. You know why?
Yeah, because
you got 9% state tax in New York, you got 4% city, so you add that up, you're no longer going to be able to deduct
but you're also losing,
So that means you got the 35.
So for those of us who work in one state and then pay taxes in both, right? Because I live in Jersey. I mean, not everybody's going to benefit.
It's going to go up on many of the rich.
But I agree with Kennedy. This is about messaging, and how do we know that Republicans have fallen short of that? They haven't been able to sell repealing Obamacare the way that they should have in the bills that they put forth, and they've had 7 years to do it.
Absolutely
and
right.
now is the reckoning hour for Republicans. This is it. This is like when you go to church and everybody goes to the front to get saved. Right? This is your reckoning.
But you know what does sound attractive, and it is easy for Republicans to sell here, and Paul Ryan hit on it when he spoke yesterday, is being able to do your taxes on a postcard.
Yeah.
Right? Simplifying the free
Yeah,
tax
but
bracket.
that's another aspect that is absolutely critical.
pen.
Simplifying the tax code on our way to a flat tax. A flat tax is the most fair and wonderful plan there possibly is. Talk about simplification, and you would see revenues explode.
I like what Tim Scott says, more of your money. More of your money. If we could just get representatives on the road. We don't need the policy wonks on the road. We need people that can just simply say, it's your money.
Well, it is. It
I
is.
like money. Money's great, Lawrence. Can I have more of that?
A reminder of when this current president went up against his opponent in November. Remember that Democrats were bleeding a certain amount of middle-class people, right? And those people in Virginia and those areas, well, the coal miners we knew weren't going to get on board, right? But those people who President Trump, then candidate, was able to scoop up, go to them with your messaging. We know that they voted for this president. Go to them with your messaging.
All right. President Trump adamant that Obamacare repeal is not dead, and he's going to take at least a swipe at it with an executive order, and saying his party is going to try and try again. And House Speaker Paul Ryan slamming the Senate for not getting advancing bills the House passed, as a new Fox News poll shows most Americans will blame Senate Republicans, not the president, if they fail to repeal Obamacare, whether that's fair or just plain politics.
This is developing now. They are not giving up. President Trump says he thinks health care reform has a chance and that Republicans can get it done in the next few months. This as he meets today at the White House with Republican Senators Lindsey Graham and Bill Cassidy, the co-sponsors, as you know, of that latest effort to repeal much of Obamacare, which came up short in the Senate in terms of votes. The president says he believes Republicans have the votes and blames the latest setbacks on time constraints.
We have the votes, but we don't have the time because it's Friday. I mean, literally Friday, it ends at a certain time on Friday. So we'll bring it into a few months from now. We'll vote it. It's block grants. It's going to be great health care. But in the meantime, I have that little period of time. I'll negotiate with the Democrats. If we can come up with a fantastic health care bill, that's okay with me. Good for both parties, bipartisan.
All right. The president gets the last word on this. Representative Steve Scalise is walking to his office. We heard from him on the House floor today. This is his first day back since being shot at that congressional baseball game. Let's listen in and see if there might be a little wild audio that we can hear. All right. Sometimes the microphones, those multi-directional microphones, can pick things up, and sometimes they can't. Those halls are a little cacophonous because they're rather hollow and tall, and so you get all that marble, and sometimes you can't hear words. But what we can see in the center of our screen is a man who spent a lot of time in ICU and on life support, walking down a hallway with some aid there and with a little bit of a limp. But Steve Scalise is back in the House, and he's already met today with House Speaker Paul Ryan. Paul Ryan said a few moments ago when asked how that meeting went that he was brought to tears. He said, "I'm no John Boehner. I was babbling. I was crying hard. I have no words to describe it." Let's listen to the applause. So, Sandra, this is a monumental day, not only for him, but for others who have been recovering from that, and for the members there in the chamber to be able to be with him and give him support.
This is his first public appearance since that shooting at the congressional baseball practice, and it was an unbelievably emotional moment when he stepped onto the floor at about 10:58 a.m. this morning. Everyone stood, rose to on their feet. And what an American moment, truly.
I'm happy about this moment, but I'm also sad because when he was first shot, there was this call for unity, bipartisan. You saw people in the Capitol praying, and they said they were going to do business better. Unfortunately, that hasn't been the case. It lasted for about a week. So I'm hoping that this is a reminder for those people that are supposed to be serving us that they got to get stuff done. They got to unite. The rhetoric is too heated right now, and I'm hoping this is just a reminder.
But can I just say, like, it is so incredible considering how this could have gone. And Harris, you remember sitting on this couch, getting updates that his life was in jeopardy, and that he might not pull through when he was in ICU.
More than once. Even after they began to do the surgeries, there were touch and go times, infections setting in. I mean, we were on Scalise watch in terms of just waiting for those new updates for many days. You know, Sandra mentioned his words on the House floor. I just want to bring some forth now as we continue to watch Congressman Steve Scalise walk back to his office. As you can imagine, these past 3.5 months have been pretty challenging times for me and my family. If you look at the outpouring of love, of warmth, of prayer, my gosh, Jennifer and I have been overwhelmed with all of that outpouring, and it's given us the strength to get through all of this and to get to this point today. It starts with God. Those words from Representative Scalise. He has walked back to his office. We have seen that happen live. Big moments today.
And in his words this morning, Harris, he tweeted out on his own Twitter account, "I'm back."
Yeah. That picture of him and his wife from the shadow, right?
That backlit in front of the Capitol.
But also
amazing? His voice so strong, his humor, his humility as he addressed the full chamber.
At one point, he said, "Prayer works." And I think we can all take a lesson from it. Prayer actually does work.
You know, you think about what he has been through, how challenging in some ways it might be to get out there right now, because there's a fear factor, right? I mean, all he was doing was practicing baseball. And I would imagine that is so traumatic that you're just walking down the street every day now. You're looking every which way, making sure that you're going to be safe, you're going to be okay. This is a testament to him, to his strength, that he's back there like this. And you know what? It's great to see the nation come together, because there's not one person that was standing there applauding him that didn't absolutely believe in all he was doing to get himself better. It's a nice sign.
You know, not to put too fine a point on it, but we remember at the time as it was happening, Kennedy, and unfolding, Representative Scalise's security detail saved a lot of lives that day because he was at that game. He continued to be a leader even in a moment when it was just kind of by the outskirts of what he brings with him when he travels. You know, one of the things that the conversation that he'll get pulled into now is healthcare, and that's where we were. And I want to get back to that because we're getting ready to see some things happen with Obamacare if they don't start to take some measures here, right? We're already seeing it
People aren't going to have health care, and their premiums are going through the roof if they do. And so you're going to have a lot of angry constituents out there that are going to say, hey, look, you know, we voted you in so that you could get this done. You didn't get it done, and now I'm left with health care I cannot afford, possibly no health care at all. And so I think there's going to be ramifications, Harris.
Well, unfortunately, it's not just political, because you obviously have people on both sides of the aisle. You have Democrats who are being completely obstructionist, Republicans who can't figure out a plan to save their lives, although, as you pointed out, they've had 7 years to do it. But you also have, and I think the real villain here, insurance companies who are holding the market and the country hostage. Because they are getting infusions of billions of dollars from the federal government to prop up the system that was meant to fail. And at the same time, they're still going to get money, and they know it. But they're going to raise premiums, which is incredibly heartless, and another reason why government and health care do not belong together. They are not chocolate and peanut butter. Harris?
Oh. Well, I've not had those things together, but that sounds delicious.
Maybe chocolate and peanut butter. Never had a Reese's cup.
Maybe in a Reese's cup. Maybe.
Exactly.
You know what? The president says that he's going to get this done on his own if he can't, some portion of it. So he's set to sign an executive order that would allow insurers to sell health plans across state lines. That's what we thought that the Republican Party was going to do in some of its legislation, and we know that it had to be rolled out in phases, that legislation. But now he gets to jump over that line, if you will.
I was finding his exact words on that executive order. I'll probably be signing a very major executive order where people can go out, cross state lines, do lots of things, and buy their own health care. And that will probably, as you just said, be signed next week. He said it's being finished now. It's going to cover a lot of territory and a lot of people, millions of people.
Look, this is a no-brainer, right? You should be able to buy any insurance in any place you want. You know, I grew up in a very, very small state in New Hampshire. Hampshire. That's not good because they only have like 1 million people. So when you need to insure them, it costs a lot more money. You don't have as big a pool.
And the president says he's also going to be working with Democrats as much as needed to go forward into 2018 to try to get something done on health care. Very interesting. Moving on just slightly with this. House Speaker Paul Ryan's frustration bubbling over. He's blaming the Senate for not getting health care and other legislation through Congress, exactly what you were talking about. Watch what he said on Sean Hannity.
More bills have passed the House this year under Donald Trump at this time than Obama and both Bushes and Clinton. The challenge we have is this chart. 274 of them are still in the Senate. So we haven't gotten them over the finish line in the Senate. Now, is that frustrating for the House? You bet it's frustrating for the House.
Okay, take a look at this. It's a brand new Fox News poll showing 56% of voters will blame Senate Republicans if they fail to repeal Obamacare. Only 18% would blame President Trump. You were just talking about this, Lawrence, with regard to tax reform, but across the board, your concerns remain in the Senate.
The alarming number that our audience just saw on the screen was 274. That's how many bills that have been passed by the House that essentially died in the Senate. They have some responsibility. And this whole notion that blame Democrats, no. Why did we give you the majority in both houses in the presidency if you can't get stuff done? And I think they're going to have the answer for that. The president can't continue to do things just through executive orders. You got to have some bills in place. Or you're going to see stuff just like in Obama administration. When the next person comes into office, it gets turned around.
But maybe the problem is Mitch McConnell. You know, Paul Ryan is going on TV publicly attacking Senate Republicans. And you know, at the heart of that, he's attacking their leadership. So if Mitch McConnell can't get people to come together, perhaps he has to. I mean, the candidate he just backed in Alabama lost. He doesn't have a lot of clout. He's at an 18% approval rating in his home state of Kentucky. And he cannot herd these cats right now. So perhaps he needs to be relieved of his leadership role.
That percentage is so low comparatively when you take into consideration that Congress as a whole is so unpopular. So if you can't even have some mojo in your own state, I mean, that says a lot. So where do we go from here?
Well, I think it's going to continue to be a challenge. I know exactly where we go from here. I think a lot of Republicans are going to get voted out. And you're going to see a complete sort of change within the Republican Party. And I think Alabama was one example of that. You're going to see many more come 2018. I think that's the reality of it. It's a remake of the Republican Party.
So a remake for them, but is it a wedge for Democrats? Because they're not doing well either. So maybe it is just these primary Republicans who are going to come in via guys like Steve Bannon to do it. What do you think? You're
going to see the conservative faction take its place, especially the people that are on the ground, because Trump's base is saying one thing, but the president doesn't want to, he refuses to sacrifice his political capital because he needs those votes that are currently in the Senate. And some of the people have been loyal to the president in the Senate that, quite frankly, he's going to have to stop backing, because I guarantee you there are going to be other candidates that Steve Bannon and other people like Sarah Palin are going to get behind, and I can see them losing their seats.
Continued frustration.
Wow. Okay. A new report is out on those infamous Facebook ads used by Russian operatives saying they were more about sowing chaos before the election than favoring one campaign over another. Whether this bolsters the Trump team's insistence that there was no collusion. And former First Lady Michelle Obama is scolding female Trump supporters, saying anyone who voted against Hillary Clinton voted against their, quote, own voice, end quote. Is it time for liberals to accept the election results and move on? Lawrence, your head's going to pop off.
That's funny.
A new report is raising questions about whether it's time to put to test all those Russia collusion allegations against the Trump campaign. The Washington Post is reporting that Russian operatives used Facebook ads to exploit our country's racial and religious divisions and did not necessarily favor any paper citing people who are familiar with the ads. Democrat Mark Warner, the vice chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, tells the paper it appears the aim of the ads was to sow chaos. Donald Trump Jr. tweeting reads, leaked descriptions of infamous Russia ads derail collusion narrative. They show support for Clinton. Some of the ads reportedly promoted African American rights groups like Black Lives Matter and even highlighted support for Hillary Clinton among Muslim women. What do you think of this, Lawrence Jones?
This is new technology. It's going to happen. The fact that the Democrats continue this collusion thing to make their argument, I think it's overplayed. People are already disgusted of it. But it goes to question, this is a private business, and people can target whatever they want to target. It may be dirty, but you know what? There's no way you can regulate it, and those that are calling for regulation of it, I think it's wrong.
But he says Don Jr. says this puts the allegations to rest. Does it?
I don't think it puts the allegations to rest when the Washington Post is making, these detailed claims that sound very important, using big words in a newspaper. Does the Washington Post not sell digital ads to anyone? That's why these media empires still exist, is because they are figuring out a way to use Facebook's technology to target people. What we haven't seen, and they sprinkle a little bit of anecdotal data, but we haven't really seen, what is the connection? How do you prove that those ads internalized and changed people's minds? Because that's the critical question.
Well, here's the thing. The ads were on both sides. We did some research on the intelligence report, and basically we came up with a bunch of ads that targeted Donald Trump as well. So it's not as though this, there were other people doing it.
But
I don't know if they were from the Ukraine.
What is the difference from the commercials?
In other words, exactly. So, but there's... Yeah, I guess you get the whole fake news thing, and how do you know if it's fake? How do you know if it's real? Should Facebook have more responsibility?
Well, what resonates more, a Facebook ad or a negative political ad? Right. And how do you measure that? How do you measure what the influences were that went into someone's very personal voting decision?
Right. And Hillary Clinton had so much money. She had so much money. All I saw is negative.
So much money.
Right.
She also, by the way, I know she would argue that the press didn't like her. I would tell you the press, they liked her. Certainly compared to Donald Trump. So she had a more positive
she's not a likable person, but
media.
All the crying election night.
But the Mueller probe, Harris, where does this put this?
Well, it's interesting because I think Kennedy has a good point. I don't know how we measure the heart when we watch things, that we can do it real time with the focus groups and we can kind of have an idea, but we're not in the voting booth with people. So we don't know in the moment that they make a decision whether or not an ad they say saw anywhere in social media, but particularly Facebook, really change them in that moment. And so how do you legislate that? How do you control a private company to keep it from doing
And that's also the biggest fear. You bring up the most critical point, is the ultimate end that the government somehow censors Facebook and tells them who to sell their ads to and what the content should be, because that is an incredibly slippery slope.
Well, and there's a part, you guys all know this, there's a part when you post up something, you have an opportunity to boost the ad. You can create your own ad. So is it going to get so personal that we can't even boost a picture of, me and Trish out on a Friday night? That hasn't happened, but it could.
I would love to.
It should,
right?
It should.
But, sincerely, maybe it's an ad for something delicious and sweet. Maybe it's an ad for a cure to cancer, whatever it is. How much do we want the government involved in a private company?
My libertarian radar is going off. Yeah. They shouldn't be involved with this.
Oh my God. No, you and Kennedy share that.
I want to qualify that, though. They shouldn't be involved, except one thing that I'm frightened by is how much terrorists have connected on Facebook and other social media sites. And that's where I draw the line.
But they're not running ads.
Yeah, but the government shouldn't have to tell
I'm hoping
them to help out.
They're mining their traffic in a slightly different way, in a national security way that has different rules and ramifications.
I think they need to.
Yeah,
but I hear you on the ads.
100%.
It is disturbing to think that the government
we got real problems.
If that Friday night does happen, I hope you like Moscow mules.
Oh, well, you have to come.
Telling all my secrets here.
And a nice amber mug, by the way. And real ginger beer.
All right. Former
know me so well.
First Lady Michelle Obama and Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg playing the gender card with their latest comments about the 2016 presidential election. What they had to say and why they just cannot seem to let it go. Next.
Welcome back. This is Outnumbered. Former First Lady Michelle Obama scolding female Trump supporters in front of an audience at a business conference yesterday, saying, quote, "Any woman who voted against Hillary Clinton voted against their own voice. What does it mean for for us as women that we look at those two candidates and many of us said, that guy, he's better for me. His voice is more true to me. Well, to me, that just says you don't like your voice. You like the thing you're told to like.
Ooh.
Isn't she telling people who to like? Huh. And Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg also discussing the topic of Hillary Clinton's failed presidential campaign yesterday. Listen to this.
You think sexism played a role in that campaign?
Do I think so?
Yes.
I have no doubt that it did.
Yeah. Do you think it was decisive?
That it was
decisive. In other words, if Hillary Clinton had been a man, she would have won that election going away.
There's so many things that might have been decisive, but that was a major factor.
Oh, I wonder what she's basing that on, Harris. I wonder what she's basing that on, Harris.
You know, I mean, this is a candidate who had the women's card. She tried to form a women's movement. She held women's events. I mean, I think she played that card pretty heavily. I think what the nation, though, was waiting for was an economic message. They were waiting for a few other things to come out of a woman's mouth or a man's mouth, and she didn't hit those.
But isn't that a viable thing to voice your opinion and your disdain for the political system? Is that economic hole that's unfortunately undulating in so many people's lives? Isn't that a valid reason to vote for someone you're hoping your station improves?
Yeah, look, absolutely. The Democrats were successfully able to rally people around Barack Obama as an African American. Were able to use that and thought that they could do that in the same way with a woman. The problem is, President Obama was actually a really good candidate. Yeah, and he was a charismatic guy who could get out there and give a speech. Well, and you were excited by him. And I'll tell you, women would be excited by the right woman, but she needs to deliver a message that resonates to women. She didn't. She came across as not caring, as better than them, and that didn't work. Ultimately,
and she didn't have a solid message, and that's something that many people in her inner circle have echoed.
And I think Democrats,
one message.
Yeah, I think Democrats were shocked about this because I got to be honest, traditionally, when they use identity politics, it traditionally works. The difference from this election is when you have people that are living paycheck to paycheck and their kids' education suck and they're tired of the border being out of control and you're putting illegal immigrants before American citizens, and they don't care about the way they look. They want someone to solve their problems. Yeah. And so this election, it just wouldn't work. The problems outweighed their identity.
Yeah, but if you had a woman that came along, Sandra, and said, I have the economic solutions for you. I understand how difficult it is. I know. I mean, a lot of women are the CFOs of their family, right? They're
and Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders actually garnered a lot of attention during the presidential cycle because they had an economic message that Hillary Clinton tried to distance herself from.
She did not get that down. And then I'll remind everybody the track record of Ruth Bader Ginsburg during the campaign, openly criticizing Donald Trump while he was still a candidate, saying she can't imagine what the country would be with Donald Trump as our president. And then just as recently as last week, she described herself as a flaming female litigator. I don't know if you saw that one.
What does that mean?
I don't know. Make what you will of it.
She's a lawyer, and she's a lady, and she has lady parts that are on fire.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
I believe that's what she's saying. I am able to translate from Bader Ginsburg to English, and that is, in fact, what that means.
Don't put the camera back on.
I just remember, Trish, when the two blue pantsuit wearing women walked on stage. Yeah. And I do the color wheel, so I'm all sorts of respect when things go wrong and you only packed one suit in your luggage. Right. But I questioned even that day if this wasn't one woman maybe, I don't know, taking a little power from another woman. Remember, Elizabeth Warren, love or hate the message, had a message about the economy and about the middle class, and that was something that Hillary Clinton didn't have. Yeah. So why not invite that person
and by the way,
campaign trail?
That economic message is ringing true in Venezuela.
Yeah.
You're saying something very interesting, though. You're talking about one female politician trying to steal the thunder.
I'm not saying which one. I'm just saying it's possible.
It is possible, but, you know, look, Hillary Clinton made her own decision. She should have taken some advice from her husband, who is a gifted politician and understood the economic challenges facing everybody.
She made it about her.
Paycheck to paycheck. I go back to that hourglass
She felt that was incredibly paternalistic of her husband to be telling her what's right.
Yeah, it was all about, I'm with her, not. And when you don't make it about the people that are suffering, they're not going to vote for you. It's simple.
And then you have to write books called,
by the way,
President Trump again defending his criticism of NFL players kneeling during the national anthem. And now a new Fox poll indicating the majority of Americans agree with the president. So is President Trump right to take a stand on this issue despite backlash from liberals? We will debate, discuss, and dissect next.